Doctor Strange, not very new, you can get it, called Doctor Strange, and they're going to explain, in that movie, they're showing all kind of ancient symbols and stuff that just blew my mind. And they're going to talk about the astral body and all that. I just disclosed that information to the next level. That's what I've been doing. So I started giving them the steps on how to make that next level. And part of it is how to I explain the astral body and how to get out of the body. But you go out, but you drop right back in. And sometimes when you're sleeping, you'll be sleeping and you'll feel like you're sitting up, but you're still laying down. Your spiritual master won't let you go any further because you will get stuck out the body. But I mean, you'll wake up, but your astral body will be out your body, and you can go into what's called a time loop. A time loop means you keep on reliving that same event over and over again. But you won't know it because you'll be body and spirit. Your soul will step out. Your soul can disconnect itself from the human body, and the spirit, which is the life force, the personality, and the you, is still there. And all the things you think are still there, but the essence of you, the decision maker of the spiritual side of you, that's a better way of putting it, is out the body. If I was able to sit with you and I could train you in no time to just step right up out your body, and you'll sit there and you'll look back and I'll point and you'll be able to see yourself sitting there out your body. And because you have someone there, because someone has to be there to guide you through those steps, otherwise you can get, there's so many gateways and doorways interdimensionally that one can get lost in. That's what Jesus Christos was trying to tell everybody. You can get caught up. And that's why he was doing what he told Judas. He said, Judas, you just got the devil. I just saw Satan into your body. Get out of here. But they said you are Satan. But what Jesus said in Aramaic was, I just saw Satan. I just saw the spirit of evil into your body. Get up out of here because the reason why I say get up out of here is because it's infective. It can spread from person to person. The same way when a bunch of women are living in the same house and all their menstrual cycles line up with men, when a bunch of men live in the house, their emotional or angers towards each other line up. So they tend to side with each other against other men. See, it happens on both, on the infinite, which is a circle, and finite, which is a square. It happens both ways. I'm not going to do a Freemasonry. Freemasonry came thousands of years after what I'm trying to explain. Okay.
Rahubat, Musa, Rahubat. Kabul Lake Kalal. Welcome to all. That means welcome to all. Okay, Rahubat. It's another week, right? We're here every Tuesday. For those who do not know, every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. We do NoopooH Live question and answer classes, and all is welcome. All is welcome. Let's see. So we're gonna get started. We got a lot to cover today. So definitely, we want to be able to have a eventful night. So let's see. Let's get started, guys. All right. For those who do not know me, my name is Petty Sina Tebtu Urae, and I've been over a 30-year student teacher. The profound doctrine of the master teacher known to us as Pandabab Yananan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us our ancient culture we identify as Wu-Sabat, also known as Wu-Nawab, which stands for those who make decisions based on sound right reasonability, based on the principles of Ma'at, based on the wisdom of the Hutui. In essence, it means it's an ancient African culture where our ancestors, our goal was to be in harmony with natural nature, to live in harmony with natural nature. And we argue that Black people, the suffering that Black people have been dealing with for the last 500 years, almost really 6,000 years, are due to the fact that we've gotten away from our natural nature principles. We've gotten away from our original culture as being Sabaeans. And Sabaean just means children of the sun, those who come from the suns. And we had a way of life that allowed us to be in harmony with natural nature. And because we've gotten away from those cultures and we have adopted foreign cultures, in particular religious theologies, we argue that this is the cause of so much of our suffering and chaos. And the only way to fix and correct ourselves is by getting back to our ancient culture. So I'm one of many student teachers around the globe who have dedicated themselves to try to help re-educate people about this ancient culture. So we've done many lectures on our YouTube. Anyone can check it out to kind of guide people through that process. And so we obviously do these live classes for those who watch our lectures, for those who read our literature. The master teacher put up close to, some say, 1,000 books, and all of it is for the re-education of our people about our culture, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, the way we're supposed to develop ourselves in this world to restore us back to our original way of living and being able to rule ourselves. Because right now we're being ruled by foreigners all over the globe. We're being influenced by foreigners and into cultures that does not benefit us. So this is what we're dedicated to. Okay. So I'm always inviting everyone and anyone, definitely spread the word. We always tell people to do that. Spread the word, because the more people that we get involved, the more people who can help, assist, and support, the stronger we're going to be. And that's our ultimate goal. So each week we get started. Before we get started, we get started with we'll call it namaz, which is our prayer system, which is extremely important for our own edification and development of ourselves spiritually. Our organization is a spiritual organization. It's about developing yourself spiritually. I always recommend watching our lectures and taking your time to watch our lectures more than once, because a lot of the information is new to a lot of people. And even if you're someone who's been seasoned in our doctrine, I always recommend watch our lectures more than once. I do it myself. So if I have to do it, and I've been in it for the length of time, I recommend everyone to do the same. And trust me, it definitely is helpful. I also want to say is, if I do make any errors and mistakes, because I know I do, I have no problem in making those corrections with anyone bringing it to my attention. So I think that's important for me to make that statement known as well. Okay, so we're going to get started with our prayer system, and we'll move on from there. Okay. Let's see. Abdul Kalam Namasat Wu-Sabat Amar Kasamun Shalal Put Panan Safa Wu-Pa-Tara Panan Sawab Wu-Pa-Tara Panan Safa Kawun Pa Sawab Wu-Pa-Tara Z Kawuna Nazula Laha Enkum Manas Sabat Wu-Sabat Amar Hadayan Un Shafe Un Manas Salafu Wu-Nataru Ajula Ye Nafasu Kum Afuk Shane Kawun Kuma Pa Sawab Wu-Pa-Tara. This book is the truth and the way. It was sent down for you all from Sabat Wu-Sabat, constellation, dark constellation, as a guidance and a healing from your ancestors, the overseers, Padnatharu. Return to your own, accept what is yours, the truth and the way. And nun tawa enkum lehe panen shafe'un wu alaj. And nun tawa enkum lehe nasuinun. And nun tawa enkum lehe ashuk. Enkum ata salafunun. Enun ata khara'ukum. Enun talub nasakuma. Enun talub nasakuma. And so nun sayam nataru. And so nun salafunun. Anunata Musba'u. We thank you all for this healing and cure. We thank you all for not forgetting us. We thank you all for Ashuk. You are our ancestors, Panatharu. We are your children. We seek your help. We seek your help. Help us, divine overseers. Help us, our ancestors. We are Musba'u. Anun, Atun, Atun, Amun. Okay, agenda 4. All right, so each week, after we do our prayers, we go over our core principles of our culture, Wu-Sabat / Wu-Nawab. And I always tell people that all of our discussions and lectures that we have on our site here is all based around our core principles. So if you listen and follow the lectures that we're doing, you'll see that it links up with all of the principles that we go over, because it is important that you not only know the principles, but you live by these principles. And that's why we have to go over them each and every week. It's that important. You must embody these principles. It has to be a part of your everyday livelihood. And this is for the purpose of, reaching our ultimate goal, which is resurrection. So our first principle is Ashak, which stands for the power of love, right? There's nothing you're going to be able to accomplish in a positive way unless you do it in the power of Ashak. And Ashak is our divine spirit force of nine ether. Our whole goal is to learn how to tap back into that spirit force energy. And that's what gives us this power of love. It makes us one with the creative force. So this is what our ultimate goal is. So that's our first principle. Second principle is resurrection, right? And that is to become goddesses and gods by opening our third eye. So once you become in tune with the creative force of Ashak, your third eye will reopen, and you'll be in how can I say, connected to what you call your higher self, and your memories will be restored, your dormant abilities will be restored, and you'll be able to make contact with your ancestors who exist on higher abodes. So this is what our ultimate goal is. Third principle is the wisdom of Dahutri and Ma'at. Ma'at stands for order, and Dahutri stands for our divine mind. And we've done discussions on those, so definitely I always recommend people to watch those lectures on those discussions to give clarity to that. Principle number four, is relationships. Our goal is, as Africans, we live of, for, and by each other as a community. And the goal is to get back to that, to get away from the Western cultures and get back to how we lived as Africans, right? So that's number four. Number five is morphic resonance / matrix. Morphic resonance is based on sound, color, vibrations, frequencies. It is the tones of existence itself. Everything is based on morphic resonances that produces matrices, and matrix are the materialization of these frequencies, right? Principle number 6 is soul and spirit. Your soul is your emotional force. Your spirit is your life force. Principle number 7 is Leviathan. Leviathan stands for moon culture, aka religion, aka Western culture. So we've done discussions on that. In fact, that's, as Sabians, that's what we're at war with. We're constantly at war with Leviathan. And then principle number 8 is health, right? Health stands for, first key to health is a positive mind. As melanated people, we need much sunlight. Water, the body is 70% water. Fasting at least once or twice a week. Herbal diet, we talk about the Dr. Sebi diet all the time. Exercise, rhythmic breathing, meditation, concentration, prayer, and chanting. All of those are keys to health. So health is just not physical, but it's also spiritual. So complete health is having a harmonious body that you're taking care of yourself physically and spiritually. So that's important. Principle number 9 is Pa'ut, the creative force itself. We identify as Pa'ut. It just means all, and if you translate it. And then we have SMAT, which is Pa'ut is based on cycles. So SMAT just stands for space, matter, and time, which deals with the cycles of nature. And the energy source itself is called Achak, right? Achak. And so that translates to ether. And that's the energy that creation existence is based off of. It's living mental energy, Achak. Okay. And then goals of students of Wu-Sabat. So for those who choose to become a student of Wu-Sabat, you have 3 primary goals we talk about every week. Goal number 1 is to raise the self. Goal number 2 is to fight Leviathan. Goal number 3 is to work to build Sabbatia, right? So goal number 1 in raising yourself, you must become born again, as the Christians teach, by learning the culture of Wu-Sabat and live it, right? So, I always talk about Christians. It's about giving up your old culture for the new culture. That's what born again is all about, So it's learning to give up the Western culture for our Sabbatic culture. And first goal is to correct your name when you do that, right? So the first thing is correct your name and make it known to all. It's almost like a baptism almost. And you must correct how you look and dress, right? To take on an African presence. That's important. I must learn to speak Sabian, our language, extremely important. Must study our doctrine every day because this is how you develop your divine mind through this, the studying our doctrine is extremely important. And also how you're able to teach people. And you must practice and master our daily rituals, okay? And you must always be positive. So there's no real accomplishments unless you're positive. I can assure you that. There's no effective accomplishments unless you're doing it in a positive mind. And then principle number 2 is fighting, or goal number 2 is fight Leviathan. We're at war. You guys know that. we're definitely at war fighting Leviathan. And this includes working to free Panabab Yananan, promoting Wu-Sabat, become a student teacher, and fight the 6 strongest weapons of Leviathan, right? So ignorance, fear, lust, lies, slander, and gossip are the strongest, some of the strongest weapons that Leviathan uses against humanity. And we're constantly fighting against that, you know. Principle the goal number 3 is to work to build Sabbatia. We work to support each other in business. We help each other reach positive goals. We help to build our culture. We must set up a landing zone for Panatharu in Africa, which means we need land in Africa that would be supported by an African government. And Ashak is the key to accomplish all our goals, right? Now, what does it mean to be a Sabian? A Sabian is someone who's thoughtful and cares, someone who is helpful and honest, someone who's responsible and hardworking, someone who demands justice, someone who is righteous, someone who is positive and cheerful, someone who is loving and peaceful, someone who is clean, and someone who is kind and considerate. Our purpose as Sabian is liberation from adverse forces. So this is, our ultimate purpose, right? Is we're constantly working to free ourselves from adverse forces. This is what your goal is each and every day. And so we say number 1 in that purpose is you must take action each and every day to free yourself of 6 ether spirits inside and out, which includes Black people who are possessed by these spirit forces. Okay, we got a lot of our people possessed by these negative forces. Number 2 is to acknowledge and fight 6 ether from promoting capitalism, the gay agenda, miscegenation, and the so-called equality of the races. So we're fighting against all of those things. And it's important you guys understand that and to get in the fight. And number 3 is to learn, live by, and promote the laws/rules of natural nature. So that's extremely important in our day-to-day things that you guys are supposed to be doing. And I always say word of advice, right? Do not judge this doctrine by watching the behavior of Panabab Yananan nor his students. Judge this doctrine by the effectiveness of the information, aka affirmation, that you personally put to practical use. This doctrine is based on self-authentication. Our people, we have to start becoming responsible. We're always pointing fingers and blaming others, and that's why I put this here. We got to get away from, as you guys already know, all the slander and gossip that's out there. And that's due to people don't want to be responsible, take responsibility for their own actions and abilities, and stop looking at what someone claims someone else is doing, and be the change that you're looking for. Because as Black people living around the world, we all have the same common adversary, and we're never going to be able to deal with that adversary if we keep fighting each other. And we've been fighting each other for 6,000 years. I talk about this all the time, right? The 2 things that we teach that our people are suffering from, which is spiritual ignorance and racial blindness. And it is our racial blindness that is keeping us divided. And as long as we're divided, we're easily conquered. Okay? So keep that in mind, guys. Alrighty then. So now, let's see. All right. So today is a continuation. Today's discussion is a continuation from last week, right? So this is part 2 to the nature and purpose of spirit beings. I hope you guys, I had to recommended you guys to watch last week's discussion. And so I hope you guys were able to do that. It's very important that you guys watch the discussion. I hope you did. And if you did, hopefully you guys have questions in regards to the discussions that we can talk about. And keep this in mind, that your questions they're not only help you, but your questions will help others, those who watch the lectures and discussions. The more people who ask questions pertaining to the subject matter, the it helps me, because then I can answer things in detail, maybe things I may not have gone over or whatever, and it makes it better for everyone who's listening to the discussions. So I highly recommend. That's one of the reasons why we do this, is for you guys who are studying to be able to ask questions. But if you're not studying consistently, like I'm always telling you, then it's hard for people to have questions. So, that is that. Okay, so let's see. We're going to get started. So we have the nature and purpose of spirit beings. So first question is, what is nine ether, right? What is nine ether? Nine ether is the multiversal spirit force of primary creation. Nine ether is the primary consciousness of the multiverse. Nine ether is the spirit force of all Black people worldwide who have woolly hair by natural nature. Nine ether is the liberating spirit force for all Black people. Nine ether is the spirit force of the positive divine mind within natural nature. Nine ether is the spirit force of Ma'at and Dahutwi. Nine ether is the spirit force that keeps one in tune and harmony with natural nature. Nine ether is the spirit force of sound right reasoning. Nine ether is the spirit force of eternal life for Black people. And it's a book the master teacher put out called Who Lived Before the Adam and Eve Story. I wanted to go into that particular book and read through it. This is the particular book right here, Who Lived Before the Adam and Eve Story. This particular book came out in, I believe, 1999. That this book came out in 1999, right? So the master teacher wrote this book in conjunction with one of his students, a female. She co-wrote this particular book with the master teacher, this beloved sister right here. And so, again, this book was put out, like I said, in 1999. And so it's actually a really good book. A lot of important information. But I just want to go over, I've done this before, but I'm using this book, deals with the same subject matter from a different point of view. And let's see if I can find it. What I'm looking for. I thought I did. All right, here it is, guys. So it's on page 30 that I'm looking for. Okay, so all right, so now the book deals with a question, right? Question. It says, you stated that Yanun, we're talking about the master teacher, sole purpose is to save the children of the Nathar on this planet. Could you explain this assignment? So that's what the question is that's being asked of the master teacher. And answer, yes, he says. Yanun, assignment through Nathar Afrati Atum Re'e. That's another name of the master teacher, right? His job is to re-spiritually educate the beings of the planet Earth, who are the children of the Nathar, meaning those children or people who are related to the Nathar, being they are the ones that are made in their image and likeness by the Nathar. Scientists, he says, Inki, Ninti, Nogal, and Arishkikau. These children must be spiritually aligned with the tone of the universe. And we say Aum, right? Aum. And so we have to be we have to get our bodies vibrating on this tone, this frequency again. We used to be vibrated on this frequency, and once our vibration was cut, we became disconnected from our high dimensional family, guys. And this is what the whole goal is. This is what the master is trying to re-educate us about, right? To re-educate us how to make contact again spiritually. So let's keep going. He goes on to say, now, everyone's body is vibrating on a certain tone. One of the 7 notes on the scale of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Right? So for those who are familiar with music, you're familiar with this. Then he goes on to say, this vibration is detectable and linked into the brain waves. They, malevolent beings, forces of principalities, know this also and are sending out abstract waves to deter you from aligning. The use of sound waves is nothing new. When the government was trying to get Noriega to surrender, this is a guy back in the early 90s. The first President Bush tried to get this guy Noriega. I don't know for those who are familiar with it. He goes on to say that to surrender, sound waves were aimed at the church he was in after seeking asylum from the American government. The music was blasted at the church and interrupted the clergy from performing their daily service at a certain frequency until they were so unbearable that the clergyman made him surrender and he ran out of the church holding his ears. So they use a weapon, a sound weapon, to get this guy to leave the church so they can arrest him. This is when this country invaded Panama. This guy was the leader of Panama, for those who are not familiar with this. Goes on to say, many people speak about hearing a buzzing-like sound in their ears. For those that are linked to the Nathar, you are being aligned. So when that message comes from Nibiru, or it's really the Manjet guys, we don't call it Nibiru no more. We say the Manjet, which is an Egyptian terminology. But go and say, you will hear it. Right now, they are testing the station signal. The same way you tune into a radio station signal before the transmission comes through clear. However, it will take until the year 2000 to be completely aligned. Certain musical groups use the tone. Certain mystical groups use the tone Aum. And the Buddhists, for example, chant it repeatedly to tune the body into one tone or frequency. They call these chants mantras. These Buddhists and other chants get you to vibrate on a frequency that will align you with the forces that will enslave your soul. Okay? So guys, do not be chanting with other races of people. That's important to know that. It says you have to tune in to the tone that your body vibrates on and not that of anyone else. You must be taught to vibrate on a frequency that will link you in with the oversoul. Okay? So this is what our ultimate goal is to, guys, for you to learn how to raise your body vibration so you're in alignment with your oversoul. And the goal is to get your cells of the body in alignment with your spirit body. That's the goal. And that's why we do the rituals, to raise our vibration. And this is what connects us, right, with the next plane of existence, which is the plane of force and the spiritual plane, and that's how you harness in 9 ether energy into your body as well, guys. This is something I've talked about before. And so, that's very important to know. But let me keep going. It says, so now again, you have to attune your soul to the sacred tone of the universe. This tone is all encompassing and has no limits. It is the medium to the source, whose love cannot be contained, for it is ever so boundless. This is an old term. We say Papa'ut, or the sacred tone, the tone of which the Nathar, Panabab, we say Panabab Yanana, and this is an older name the master teachers go by, but I'm going to use the updated terms for today because this is an older book, guys, just so you know. So this is a tone which Panabab Yanana teaches about, is the Ayin. They call it the Ayin principle, guys. And or the sound of Aum. Now notice, if you will, that the sound of Aum is as the sound of the first letters of the words omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Right? 3 attributes of the Supreme. This sound raises from the throat to the tip of the lips. It flows to the center of the head and escapes from the ears. The Hindu symbol of Aum is like the Ashodic Soretic letters of Ayin and Meme, only written in the opposite way. This is similarity between the Hindu symbol of Aum and the Ashodic Soretic Arabic letters of Ayin and Meme are really the same, just in the Hindu script, it is written backwards. There is also another symbol for the divine love felt by the masters, and shared by those who have returned to the bosom of the all, or we say Papa'ut. And it's the Hua symbol the master taught us about. This is the older symbol, guys. The master teacher taught us about. It says, as a symbol, it spells love in any language. And then it referred to a Family Guide book. It goes into that symbol. We have a book that talks about it, guys, for those who don't know. It's also the Tamarian or Nathar deity, who translated as the creative force of will. With the right amount of input, it will open up centers in the brain, which will cause all your glands to vibrate on the same frequency and put you on a station where there is information being broadcast that you will be able to pick up and receive telepathic messages. And with this, the Etherians will speak directly to you and direct you in what steps to take and where to go. So the goal, guys, is once you learn how to make contact with the Nathar, then they will give you instructions. And that's the goal for every student of Wu-Sabat, right? Is to learn how to make connection. That's why the master teachers spent the last 50 years trying to educate us about these spiritual principles, okay? Then it goes on to say, Nathar, Atum Urae, the master teacher, is here to prepare 144,000 to be taken up for 1,000 years or one day. Then they are to return to save this planet with their own Nathar, who is of the Natharu. They have called him the Christ or HaMashiach or El Messiah or the Messiah, the beloved. And galactically, he is also known as Sananda. Okay? Then it goes on. I'm not going to go into that. All right. So all that was important information for you guys. We'll cover some of that stuff later, later on in our discussions, because there's a lot to unpack what I read there. But it's just to give you guys an insight on our goals and what your spiritual goal is, your spiritual journey is. This is why we teach our doctrine is based on self-authentication, meaning it is your goal to learn how to raise yourself up. It's our goal to teach you these things, and then it becomes your goal to learn how to raise yourself up and to make contact. That's why we've always had spiritual orders. Right now, we have the ancient Egyptian order. It's not active right now, but these are orders that the master teacher set up to educate us about spiritual things we can do so that we can learn how to make contact with the Nathar. And this is the personal objective of every student of Wu-Sabat. So, so I hope all know that. All right. Well back, you saw Pharaoh. All right. So, question: what is sixth ether? Answer: sixth ether is the spirit force of secondary creation. Sixth ether is the spirit force of ignorance, fear, lust, and deception. Sixth ether is the spirit force of all straight-haired people by unnatural nature. Sixth ether is the spirit force of opposition to non-ether. Sixth ether is the spirit force of sex and reproduction. Sixth ether is the spirit force of death and the creative mind within the universe. And I had referred to a book we put out called "Are There Black Devils?" I recommend a lot of people reading that, especially now with all this negativity you see out there. You guys will see that the negativity is based around two things: slander or gossip. Guys, keep that in mind. It's based around slander or gossip. But let's keep going. Question: why are people ignorant of spirit forces within natural nature? Answer: we live in a world culture that keeps people ignorant to the nature and purpose of spirit forces. Ignorance to the nature and purpose of spirit forces serve the purpose of the ruling elite in the world. People who are spirit conscious cannot be ruled by ignorance, fear, or deception. All power in the world comes from spirit knowledge. For the more conscious a person is on the nature and purpose of spirits, the greater that person's intelligence. That's very important, guys, to know that. There's a reason why our people are spiritually ignorant, that they don't realize they have an inward spirit within themselves. Okay? Power is based on spirit knowledge, guys. Your power is based on spirit knowledge. In fact, I want to let this, the master teacher did a lecture on this subject matter where he gets into this, and I think it's extremely important for you guys to hear it. This was a discussion back in the 80s where he's explaining this information in the 80s. Okay, so listen to this, right? And then we'll kind of do some commentary on what the master teacher is trying to explain. Okay.
Language speaking in heaven is Hebrew, unless it's from one language to the next. So if someone is laying on the floor, and if no one can translate what he's saying, he ain't speaking in no tongue.
Oh, I'm gonna go back a little bit more.
Incense and oils. If you would like any further information on these items, contact the original tents of Kedar, 719 Bushwick Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11221. And be sure to ask for a listing of the most dynamic books in history, authored by Sayyid Ali Marisa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. We, the Nubian Islamic Hebrews, would like to hear from you. Write us and let us know how the true light has made a difference in your life. Unlike those fake healers and lying preachers, we are not asking you to send us money for prayer cloths and lucky numbers. We are a self-supporting program. We just ask that you show your support by writing as Sayyid al-Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. Let him know how the true light has made a difference in your life. We are asking you, don't send your hard-earned money to those lying men who claim to come in the name of Jesus and who really come in the name of themselves. So beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Now let us continue with the true light. Remember, you are the light, and you have the power over all things.
Speaking in tongues, it says in the Bible that you'll be speaking in tongues and interpretation, translation. You don't translate unless it's from one language to the next. So if someone is laying on the floor, and if no one can translate what he's saying, he ain't speaking in no tongue. He's speaking about. If it's not one of the known languages of the world or of heaven, now if you want to know what languages of heaven, read your Bible. Paul, who they follow, who was a self-proclaimed apostle, said when he was struck down on the road that Jesus spoke to him and called him Saul. Right? And spoke to him in the Hebrew tongue and said Saul. It says it in there, in the Hebrew tongue. So the language is speaking in heaven is Hebrew. And when the angel Gabriel came to Rasulullah Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, he spoke to him and said Iqra, which is Arabic. And Arabic and Hebrew is really the same language. So the languages from heaven is Arabic and Hebrew. So if you're going to be speaking in tongues when you get the Holy Ghost, you'll be speaking in Arabic or Hebrew. You won't be going blah, 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 blah. And some rib-eating preacher is going to pretend he can interpret what you're saying. You're not going to be knocked on the floor and foaming and jumping around acting like some type of animal. That's not in here. It's not in here. Now, tell me one place in here where Jesus' disciples around him jumped up and fell on the ground. And if Jesus was the Holy Ghost, when they walked up and that man kissed him in the garden, he should have fell on the ground and because he would have been filled with the Holy Ghost and he would have put his arms around the Holy Ghost, who would have been classified Jesus because they say he was the Holy Ghost. These are not churches. These are clubs, fraternities, places where people come because our people have to be in groups because we're tribal. We don't feel, you can't even go shopping alone enough. When a woman goes shopping, what she say? I'm going to call Gladys so we can go shopping. Y'all going to spend my money, you and Gladys. She can't go by yourself. How many times you go to a movie by yourself? A lot of people don't go to movies by themselves. I got to find somebody to movie. I can't go to it. I'm going to swim in a movie by myself. Right? You got to turn on the television and eat dinner. You ever sit in the kitchen with nothing? Just wait to go to the living room and turn the television. You're just a tribal person. You can't take that away from you. And because the truth wasn't with you, you fabricated synthetic truth. Call it Jehovah's Witnesses, Pentecostals. And the white man knew you needed it, so he just catered it. Issued it all in and took your money. He knows what you need. He knows what you need because he studied it. You see? Now that the truth has come, he's upset. So now you have to turn the world on us and call us cults and crazy and all that. And you was in church. You know what you said? You sung a song. How many of y'all were Christians? Don't be afraid now, because you know all the young Christians. At one time, even if you followed Honorable Elijah Muhammad, before that, you was in the church sitting up there pumping the tambourines with him. Don't be showing off here now. We know each other now. We get the Holy Spirit. The Lord Jesus was sent to us. We know who we are, correct? All right. How many of y'all remember this song? Give me that old time religion. You do? Let me hear y'all sing it. Now y'all really on the spot. Let me hear what it says. Don't be shy. Come on.
Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion.
It's good enough for me. That's right. If it was good enough for, that's right, and good enough for my father, and good enough for my mother, then it's good enough for me. If it was good enough for Abraham, and it was good enough for Moses, and it's good enough for me.
What is the role of the angel of death?
For those who did not hear the question, the young lady asks, what is the role of the angel of death? That's important to know. He's going to get into some more spiritual things. He was just talking about the Holy Ghost and how these preachers claim to be speaking in tongues, and it's all that in gibberish, and it's just fake. How people still listen to that silliness is just fake because they lack spiritual knowledge, and that's how they get tricked. But let's keep going.
The angel of death was referred to as Israel in the scripture, was the angel assigned to shape the flesh of Adam in the garden and put him in the garden. Thus, he was also the angel that he sent to collect the souls of men on Judgment Day. Now, many people who say they died and reached the other side say they meet a being there who has light, who has his hand stretched forth, trying to tell them to come to the other side, and most of them turn around and come back here rather than going on. That being that they meet when you leave this plane, the being that meets you on the next plane is the angel of death. He's not ugly and gross and frightening. He's an angel of light who comes to meet you to take you from this state, nestled, into the state of Malakut, into the angelic state or the next realm, to prepare you for your own judging.
Okay, now again, this was back in the 80s. He says people who transition, who died, they'll meet he said it, he used an angel light, but we call it a mu'ahu, right? A mu'ach or mu'ach or mu'ach or mukak. That's another word, or Ethereum. That's another terminology that we use. But he's talking about how you will actually be for those people who transition, we're talking about now. For those people who transition, they will actually meet one of these beings. Okay, so that's important for you guys to be aware of.
He does that with everyone?
Every being that has a soul, because there are races of people on earth who have no soul, merely a spirit. When they die, their in-embodied spirits roam the plane. Plane in what they call ectoplasma or vapor, they become ghosts or whatever you want to call it. They intimidate people.
What's the difference between a spirit and a soul?
Good question. In the original language, you have the word ruh. Ruh means wind, and that is soul. It has an effect on objects. Wind moves objects. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas nafs or nefesh in Hebrew, nafs in Arabic, means spirit. Now, the spirit is the light from the heaven. It is the skin. The soul is the emotional body, and it's the light from the earth, which you call hala or your aura. You follow that? Every living thing, including rocks, have a spirit. Everything that lives has a spirit. But everything that has emotional changes has a soul. Now, there are also those who assimilate emotional changes, and they practice it daily in the form of cinema, called movies. This is why back in the ancient days, when they speak about the stages and Shakespeare's stages, all that drama did not come out of Africa, didn't come out of India, didn't come out of the outer world, it came out of Europe. These playwrights in emulating life, in emulating emotions, which may sound like it's not important, but has developed into movies today of people emulating emotions. You follow? And the reason why there's no real good black actors on a scale of white actors is because black people are not good liars. To be a good actor, you have to be a good liar. You follow?
Yes.
And when you watch the average black actor, you know, you watch Sidney Poitier and you say, he's a good actor. But you really can see through it, you see it as an act. You can watch certain white movies and they convince you to the point where you can become emotionally about it. You can almost cry. Well, they are acting like they have emotions.
So no white people have...
They have forfeited their souls. Now, this does not include people all the way down to certain Italians, Jews. Certain of these people are the black seed. They better remember it, though. They don't want to admit that they're black. They have mixed in. They are part of the lost tribe, some of them. Not all of them, some of them. And you don't know who they are, and I'm not going to sit out and pick them out. So they'll let us know when they're ready to come home, who they are. Who was this avatar by the name of Sri Sai Baba? I think that's what his name was. There's several Sai Babas. There's Sharti Sai Baba, and there's such a Sai Baba. Sharti Sai Baba was a Muslim and a master.
Okay, Allison, in regards to your question, no, that's not when he's not talking about the white light. He's talking about when our people, now we're talking about black people, when they transition, they will be confronted with an Ethereum. He used the term angel of light because this was back in the 80s and we were in the school of Islam. So he was using Islamic terminology to explain concepts to our people because they wouldn't understand Egyptian terminology, which is what we're using today. Remember, all of the religions came out of ancient Egypt, right? They took our spiritual doctrine from Kemet, from Egypt, and turned them into religions. So it's important you guys understand that. And so in the 80s, he was teaching our indigenous culture using religious theology to explain certain spiritual concepts. So when he said angel of light, he's talking about Ethereans, or what we call in our language, we'll say mu'ahu, right? A mu'ach. And so that's the terminology, just not to be confused with people who see this bright white light. That's an actual wormhole or portal back to this realm, earth realm, for people to reincarnate. So don't get confused between those two things. And so let me skip. So he's asked another question about he's going to go into a particular spiritual master in India at that timeline, right? Because again, keep in mind, this is in the 80s, the mid to late 80s, 88, 87 part when this class took place, or 89 even. Okay. So he's going into a particular spiritual master, and he was trying to explain that you had two individuals had similar names in India. One was a Hindu and the other was a Muslim. One was a master, the other one was an imposter. He was trying to explain the difference between the two. But it's important for you guys to hear this.
In India, who was trying to bring them away from the Hindi faith. He said he would incarnate again. And another man who calls himself such a Sai Baba professes to be that incarnation. But we have proof that he's not. Because A, he tells them that the man who was before him, Shakti Sai Baba, was indeed a Muslim who lived in a mosque. Correct? And as a Muslim, you know where in the world could you comply with the Hindu faith. Not with its thousands of gods and idols and statues. There's no compromising for that. Any master of the spiritual world knows the invalidity of any statue on earth. Even man, in a physical sense, is almost not important, let alone a statue. So, such a Sai Baba is a self-acclaimed avatar, where Shakti Sai Baba was a real Ila Mutajasida, is what the real word of it is. Okay? The man that you see in India walking around in an orange jalabiya, that's not nobody but an impersonator. And if you read enough history, you find there's about 50 of them in India saying the same thing. Saying that they produce Vibhuti, as they call it, and saying that they materialize things. There's whole lots of them there. And that's because the people of the Hindu faith belong to the religion of Satan. They have power to do things. Don't underestimate the power of Satan. Don't think every time somebody levitates or makes something materialize, he got to be righteous, because that's not true. Satan himself was an angel who fell from grace.
I would like to know what is the difference between an extraterrestrial being and a terrestrial being?
An extraterrestrial being means a being who has come into this atmosphere and he's extra. He's not one calculated in the book of life according to the earth's sphere called Nasut. If he comes out of Malakut into Nasut, he is an extra being in this terrestrial environment. You understand?
Okay, let me give some commentary on that, because what the young lady asked him, what is the difference between an extraterrestrial and a celestial being, right? And now he's explaining an extraterrestrial being is coming from another realm we call at that time Malakut, versus the realm of human beings is Nasut. Okay, now what did he mean by that in today's terminology in our doctrine? As humans, we're vibrating on a third density, or 3 ether. This universe is a 3 ether universe. It's vibrating on a 3 ether density level. Okay. ETs that come into this, when people say they see ET and they see a UFO or something, and they're coming into this and they're able to see them in this atmosphere, they're either coming from a 4th density, they're coming from a galaxy that's vibrating on a higher density. So it could be a 4th density, a 5th density, a 6th density, even all the way up to the 9th density. Like the master comes from a galaxy that's vibrating up to the 9th density. Okay. And so these beings who are extremely more intelligent than humans, they're able to drop the vibration of the crafts that they're flying in into this dimension, right? They use portals and time portals to go through. Okay, so it's important for you guys to understand, that concept between these beings. Now, and this is the goal, guys. This is the goal of what resurrection is. We come from these higher realms, and we've been trapped on the 3rd dimension because we've lost our spiritual insight. Right. And this is what the master teacher is trying to make clarity about, the different levels of existence that we're cut off from as humans. And In order to become aware of these things, we have to be re-educated spiritually about these different other realms, right? So let me keep going.
Yeah, I remember reading that an avatar, an avatar can come in, avatars come in succession. Like one spirit incarnates into a person who then incarnates into another person. Correct. And I was wondering, okay, being that, okay, the Holy Ghost, whoever resided in him, must have been there all the time if they enter you from the time of birth.
That's pertaining to the angel Gabriel who came to Mary, right? Okay, good. But now remember that Jesus had to be moved after the order of Melchizedek. You understand that? That's his next step higher than the angel Gabriel.
Oh.
Go ahead. I think I see where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Okay, so it said, when a person is born, that the avatar incarnates into him. As the person grows and matures.
One way he becomes elemental Jessica. There's different ways.
Oh.
He can become elemental Jessica because the spirit enters into the spark. Like I explained, when a man before man ejaculates, the spark travels up the spinal column to go to the brain to get the charge. They can do it at that point. They can come into a person when they're dying. At the moment a person gets into a car accident, a car crash, they're about to die, another spirit can take that body and that person will survive and be a different being. Many different ways that spirits get into the body. But it's a certain resistance state that the human body has to be at to make themselves vulnerable to possession.
And then when the spirit incarnates into that person, then that person becomes an avatar?
It depends. If that avatar is a teacher or just an embodied spirit. If the spirit that comes into them is from a realm where he's a teacher, then that person will go about teaching. If it's just an embodied spirit, anything could happen from possession to demonic possession to sicknesses, anything. The world we're talking about is much more sensitive than just the one thing that avatar some angelic being who comes down and takes a body and boom, the person becomes a teacher. It's more to.
Okay, so now he's talking about the different types of spirit beings, guys. This is the most important part of this discussion. You must understand the different types of spirit beings. That's why I introduced you guys to 9 ether spirit forces and 6 ether spirit forces. And that's what the master teacher has been trying to explain to us. So many of our people get into spiritual practices, whether it be Yoruba, Ifa, Voodoo, Santeria, and they're calling on different spirit forces and they don't understand there are different types of spirit beings, different levels of intellect. Because spirit beings are intellect. Okay. And the master is trying to explain there are different types of beings that you have to know when you're doing spiritual work, who you're making contact with, how you should be making contact with certain beings, under what conditions you should be making contact with certain beings. That's why in our rituals, there are procedures we have to go through. That's why I keep saying you have to be in a positive state of mind. When you're doing spiritual work, you have to be in a clean environment. Your clothes have to be clean. You can't have you can't have drunk something like some alcoholic beverage. We even tell people it's not even good to have eaten at times, right? To not have engaged in any kind of sexual relations. There are certain things you have to there's a condition your body needs to be in when you're going to go into spiritual work, because if you're not in a certain type of vibration and state of mind, you will call on a demon and don't realize it. So you guys have to be aware of that. And the master teacher has spent a lot of time trying to make these points clear over the last 50 years, right? Now, question from Nolene Frank, question: will our ancestors be on these crafts in order to be in contact with us? Yes. Now, first of all, yes. When you're doing spiritual work, right, and you're trying to make contact with your ancestors, that's a. How can I say this? It's a different. They're different. The beings that you're making contact with when you're doing spiritual work are the Etherians. We identify them as the Mu'ahu, right? Now, those beings more than likely won't be on the crafts. The beings that are on the crafts are physical, like you and I. They're just higher vibrational beings. Okay, so it's like a different set of beings. I don't want to be confusing in that, but you have spirit, like they're pure spirit beings, the Etherians, and these beings don't materialize. And then you have other beings who are physical, like we are, but they're just vibrating on a higher dimension. So they live in higher realms. They live in galaxies that vibrate in higher realms, and those are the ones that are coming in the crafts for us once we're ready. And they'll know you're ready when you learn how to make contact. That was the whole goal. This is the whole mission of the master, to raise us up when we're ready, because this is the pickup time. With the pickup supposed to start it for us in 2003 up until 2030. And to my knowledge, I don't know of anyone who's actually made that transition. This is why the disagreeable ones kidnapped the master teacher, to prevent us from reaching this goal, because they knew what the ultimate goal is. Once we were resurrected, we would be educated, the master was saying, for 1,000 years, and then come back to the planet to bring the planet back to righteousness. That was the whole goal. They talk about it in the book of Revelations. Remember, they stole this knowledge from Kemet. So these were things our ancestors taught and was in teaching. And then they, obviously the Romans and the Greeks took this information, plagiarized it, and confused everybody about what our ancestors were teaching. And that's why the master teacher came, to clarify our history, our story, and what our goal's supposed to be, right? We're so caught up in European culture, we're not even thinking about nothing spiritually. And keep in mind, they don't teach nothing about spiritual development in this culture. They keep our people totally ignorant to that reality. Okay, so it's imperative that you guys understand this, right? But let me see, he's going to talk a little bit more about this.
So then what do they mean by avatars come in succession?
Who's they?
I mean, not they. What does it mean when it's all in this way?
Because the word avatar is not as important as people like to make it. And the word avatar, or like I said, element of Jessica, is no more than the awakening of the supreme being in an individual. He realizes that he is one with the Creator at that time. You follow that? Mm-hmm. That's nowhere near as important as Michael or Michael or Gabriel incarnating a conscious spirit who have been teaching for centuries, as you know them, which is a much higher position. A person can be a man, become an avatar, develop into an angelic being by being steered or tutored by an angelic being. But if you have an avatar in him, if you have a spirit, a divine spirit in him, then it's easier for him to be taught by angelic beings than he would if he didn't have it. He becomes a more accessible medium than if he's just a person who gets premonitions. Whereas Jesus was a person who didn't get premonitions, the spirit was in him. So for him to send divine powers from the Father through him was quite simple. Whereas other people who would get flashes of divinity, Muhammad, for instance, would receive these spiritual impressions or awakening. You see?
Okay, so now the master is trying to explain again the different positions of spirit beings. So for us, he's talking about our goal is to resurrect and become one with your oversoul, right? That's our goal. Once you're able to do that, then you'll be able to make contact with the Nathar, who is on a whole nother level or a higher position. Okay, then that's when they'll know we're ready to be picked up. Once you guys make contact with your oversoul, you become one with it, which is what the master is trying to explain. Now, then they know, okay, they're ready. They can come get us. Okay. And when they come get us, then we'll be educated for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years. And then come back to earth. Now, when we come back to earth, right, we can either come back to earth as if we only left for one day, or we can come back to earth 1,000 years from today. For instance, it could be, we could come back to earth in the year 3000 AD, or we could come back to earth in one day. And that's how the master explained it. Now, why the difference in timeline? I can't answer that question. I can only hypothesize why the difference in timeline, because I know the master teacher always talked about whether or not it's worth coming back to this timeline to save humanity, or if humanity is too far gone. If it's too far gone, because there's catastrophes that's going to take place, because the timeline that we're in, guys, we're in a dimensional shift timeline where the earth, the universe itself, is moving into a 4-ether universe. We're shifting upwards. Okay. So the master wrote a book on that. He's been talking about the dimensional shift for over 30 years, right? That's the timeline that we're in. So we're moving into that. So that's what all this earth changes is about. Because of the dimensional shift, that's why we're having all these natural disasters and calamities. Okay. And people who are naturally 3-ether people, 6-ether people, locked into this dimensional cycle, that's what all the death is all about. A lot of people can't make that shift, that mental shift. And a lot of people are going to, unfortunately, going to perish. The people are already perishing. That's what all these viruses are about, COVID and everything else. Read Revelations chapter 18. Chapter 19 talks about this day and time we're living in, right? We were supposed to be out of here by, Revelation chapter 13. We were supposed to have been out of here, the chosen. But of course, as you guys can see, we haven't been listening. As the master teacher said, has taught us that if we don't resurrect, then we gotta wait for another 24,000 year cycle to pass by. For the next cycle to come through, to be re-educated again, if we don't make it this time around. And it doesn't look too good for us, because most of our people are too materialistic. They're not even thinking about themselves spiritually. They don't even understand what that means. Okay. All right. So let's see. Question from George: can people get caught up because of loved ones? Absolutely, you get caught up because of loved ones. That's what stops most people from developing themselves spiritually, is their circle of family and friends. Because we want to, guys, come on now. We want to go to Red Lobster still. We want to go to the movie still. We want to go to the Bahamas still. We still caught in the world. That's why the master tried to have strict a code of conduct in the community that people now are complaining about. They never understood why the community was set up a certain way to develop yourself spiritually. That's the whole goal. That was always the goal. But we're so caught up in the world, and so trying to teach somebody spiritual concepts who are not spiritually naturally, meaning that's just not who they are. And so a lot of people are unfortunately, they're just ignorant, to these concepts. It's totally ignorant. Greetings, my beloved Tarbuna. And yes, Nala Seeker, caught up in person, places, and things. That's exactly what the problem is with our people. We're too physical. That's just the bottom line. Okay, but now let me get back to questions, because we're running out of time. Question: how does spirit knowledge make one wise? Answer: the first step to spirit wisdom is to know what spirits are. Spirits are no more than conscious gas forces of nature, aka conscious energy. Spirit, aka energy, is what gives and takes life from all persons, places, and things. Spirit energy is either growing or decaying. Living energy grows life, and decaying energy terminates life. Conscious life requires energy for growth and development. The greater one's ability to harness spirit energy within their body, the greater one's consciousness will be, which means that intelligence is based on how one is able to process energy into their body, guys. You increase your intellect through learning how to harness energy into your body. That's one of the reasons why we do the rituals. You can't make contact with higher spirit forces unless you raise your intelligence level. That's extremely important. You have different levels because spirit beings are intellect, and you have different levels of intellect. And so this is the whole purpose of our whole doctrine, is to raise your level of intelligence about this subject matter, guys. We put out a Master Secret. I believe it's Master Secret, a book on this, number 22. I believe it is. Let me see if I can find it. Where the master teacher talks about this. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, this book right here, this is a Master Secret, and it's called Designer Genes. This is Master Secret number 22, right? And here, it's right here. This is paragraph 12. It says, there is a misconception that the larger the brain, the higher the intelligence, which actually is incorrect, guys. The higher intelligence is dependent upon the increased number of neurons in the brain. So as you're able to harness energy into your brain, that is how you increase intelligence, guys. Not reading the white man's books or anyone's books for that matter. You literally, because your goal is to make contact with your oversoul. Your oversoul already knows most of the stuff on this planet. You just have to learn how to make contact with it. That's what our whole focus is. But again, it's hard for us because we're constantly being distracted because of this system we live in. You got, this is another reason why in the 9-ball, the master, I read it all the time. This right here, 9-ball part 1, the very last paragraph, the master teacher says it. And I'm going to keep reading this to hopefully you guys really get it, right? It says, all power begins in the mind, be it political, economic, military, or scientific, because the body is just a framework and tool for the mind. Therefore, the prime power is mind power, from which all other powers develop and mature, including the power of liberation. Here's the key. 9 ether develops 9 reason. 9 reason develops 9 knowledge, and 9 knowledge develops the 9 mind power, which is a prerequisite to the Ethiopian mental and physical liberation. So you must learn how to harness 9 ether into the body. And that's through the rituals, guys. Okay, so let's keep going. Question: how can this knowledge liberate black people from 6 ether? Answer: once you realize that intelligence comes from learning how to harness spirit energy into their bodies, then once into our bodies, then we will know how to outthink those who keep us in captivity, right? So we have to learn how to harness this energy into us. That's how you increase your intellect. It goes on to say, melanin within black people's bodies are dedicated to harnessing spirit energy because black people's ignorance of this actual fact, we never learn how to take advantage of this reality. We don't understand the power of our melanin, guys. The disagreeable ones know. They know exactly the power of our melanin. That's why they keep poisoning it through the food they give us. Once black people learn of the power of harnessing spirit energy, then we will regain the right knowledge of how to overcome all of our life-based challenges. Remember, knowledge rules ignorance. Question: what will it take for black people to become spiritually conscious once again? Answer: black people must give up the cultures that keep them in spiritual ignorance. Black people must become knowledgeable about the differences of spirit forces. Black people must become conscious of the spirit forces within themselves. Right? When you read the Bible, John chapter 1, it says, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. And that light shineth in the darkness, but the darkness comprehended it not. What is the light that is talking about in the Bible? The light is your spirit, and the darkness is the body. You don't comprehend your inward spirit. And the reason why you're not in tune with your own spirit is because we're not spiritually conscious no more. We don't know anything to develop ourselves spiritually, guys. Right? Black people must realize that as long as they remain spiritually ignorant, they will continue to be ruled by adverse forces within and outside of themselves, right? So we're plagued, guys. We're plagued by 6 ether forces inside of us, right? And we're plagued by 6 ether forces outside of us. And we're going to continue to be ruled by these forces as long as we remain ignorant about these spirit forces. Oh, is it? Okay. Question. Let's see. Nolene Frank. Knowing language is also key to contacting etherians. How do we contact if we don't speak our language? Okay. The reason why the master teacher has made it clear to us why we must stop speaking English, and I talk about this a lot. And we did a lecture on this, right? We did a lecture on the language, right? The English actually drops your vibration. The whole goal is to raise your body's vibration. That's the whole goal. That's our whole mission, right? And so the language is key. Language is what? Tones. When we're speaking Sabaic, when we speak our actual language, our language is based on tones that literally will raise your vibration. That's why the master teacher said you got to start speaking a language, you'll break the spell. Because in our language is based on these tones. That, guys, this is why I talk about this a lot. Why the Mukasu made it his business to make sure we stop speaking our African languages. He had to prevent us from doing that. It's one of the reasons why they keep changing the music and they put on musical artists who sing in these high pitched tones like Drake and them. They're singing in high pitched tones, and they got rid of musicians who sung in deep baritone voices like Barry White and what's that other guy? Isaac Hayes and you had Teddy Pendergrass. These brothers were singing in high tones. Gerald Levert, right? They were singing in high tones, and that's why the Mukasu, he was getting rid of that kind of music. The only I watch this with my Hamatet a lot. The only people that's singing in deep tones is the reggae brothers. If you listen to Buju Bantu, he sings in a deep tone. You have Buju Bantu. They, in fact, what's his name? Did a record with them. What's it? DJ. Oh yeah, DJ Khaled. Go look at DJ Khaled. His album. He did a record. It's on YouTube with Buju Bantu and who is it? And y'all need to listen to these brothers' tones and all. Let's see. DJ Khaled. Where is that at? This right here, this video. Now I'm not gonna play it because they probably won't, They probably won't let me. They'll take the video down. But this particular video right here, guys. Hold on. Let me just let the commercial go through.
Welcome to Making Dough.
And
today,
but I tell you guys to listen to this video, right? Listen to this particular video and listen to these brothers' tones that they're singing in. That the Mukasu has did everything in his power to get us speaking in these high tones, these high pitched voices, you know. And so that's a problem. That's that's why the master teacher had you know, is trying to reintroduce us into our language. You know, that's one of the main reasons why. But let's keep going. You know, and so yeah, roll back, Khufu. Let's see. Question: what are some important points to know about spirits? Answer: all must know and never forget that spirits are one's personality. Okay, you know a spirit by how one behaves. A non-ether spirit is someone who works to be in tune with nature, someone who is positive, someone who is loving and kind, someone who works hard to make life better for all, someone who is concerned with giving as much as they get, someone who does not use anger to solve problems and challenges within their life, someone who is concerned about their health and work hard to maintain it naturally, someone who knows how to reason to come up with solutions to problems, someone who avoids negative person, places, and things, someone who never judges person, places, or things without knowing all the facts. That's a non-ether spirit personality, guys, right? Then you have a six-ether personality. A six-ether spirit behaves just the opposite of a non-ether spirit. Six-ether spirits are selfish and love making excuses for their behavior. They are full of fear, always talking about negative situations without ever giving solutions. They are addicts to lust, fun and folly, sex, food, drugs. They love gossip and slander and call that knowledge. They are obsessed with how they look and what others think about them. They cherish idle time, doing nothing, and never able to accomplish goals. Or if they are motivated to accomplish goals, it is for selfish reasons. They only know how to think, but never reason, which is why they cannot come up with positive solutions to problems. Now we see these behaviors in all people, which is how we know that humans are possessed by many different kinds of spirit forces, which is not natural to nature, meaning one person equals one behavior pattern equals one spirit force. When we see different behavior patterns within one person, this is how we know they are possessed by many different spirit forces who have different levels of intelligence. Remember that spirits are intellect, which is why when we look at the animal world, we see different kinds of behaviors versus the insect world, another kind of behavior versus sea life, another kind of behavior versus human life, yet another kind of behavior. Okay? Question. What are things people can do to rid themselves of six-ether spirits? Answer. The first step to dealing with spirits is to acknowledge their existence and learn to become aware of your own personal spirit nature. Know the difference between the behaviors of spirits and learn to acknowledge when you start to behave in a certain way. Be honest with yourself about yourself. Knowledge of self is the first step to the dark side, aka blackness. Know that looking for the light within is a trick of six ether taught to you by the children of fire, aka the children of light, aka the Luciferians, aka the bright ones, aka the morning star. In fact, the master put out a book on this very subject matter. Let's see, about the children of light, right? If I can find it right here, this actual facts. Actual facts number 93. It's called the God of Light and Fire. Right? For those who have it, check this out. Nanar is the bright one. See this paragraph 149. Nanar is the bright one. That's why they always keep telling us to go into the light, to become enlightened, right? So it goes on to say Lucifer or Lu means primitive and cipher means cycle. So Lucifer stands for sixth ether cycle of nature, guys. This is why they teach you that black is bad, darkness is bad, the bad guy wears black, Jason kills at night. Jason that killer, Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger kills at night, Michael Myers, that's the Halloween guy. I'm sure they got a Michael Myers movie coming on because of Halloween. He kills at night, bad things happen at night, ghost comes out at night. It's to make you fear, put all that fear in you, darkness. Why? Because they do not want you to go into blackness, aka the meditative mind, which is how you expand your consciousness. They don't want you sitting in darkness in deep concentration on your challenges in life, which is how you expand your consciousness to solve your problems. They don't want you sitting in darkness, which is how you can open a stargate to higher dimensions to make contact with your ancestors. They know that if you did these things every day, 3 times a day, in a matter of 9 months, your body's vibrations will increase, allowing you to make contact. So they must keep you in the light, keep you distracted at all costs each and every day of your life. Even at night, you have lights on, which is why they created cities that never sleep. Their goal is to always keep you in the light, never go to the dark. And if and when you do want to go to the dark, fear kicks in from all the years of programming of being afraid of the dark. This fear is what is keeping us from transforming. It has even stopped me on my spiritual journey. Guys, I've had these same experiences and dealing with spiritual work. Fear kicks in because we're not used to it. And so, when you start doing spiritual work and you get really deep into it and you start, tapping into those realms, trust me, fear kicks in, and that we have to work our way out of it. They bred fear into our genes, into our genetics. That's why so many of our people don't want to deal with spiritual work because of fear. We have deep rooted, seated fears in us. And you won't know it until you start doing this stuff. You start doing spiritual work and you'll see it. Take my word for it. That's why we say take your time, right? So take your time, go slow, learn to overcome this fear they put into our genes. This fear is in our bloodline. So we teach, mind your mind for the jewel of your soul. And guys, this word right here, mind, like a miner digging for, a mine digs for gold. So that's what we mean. Mind, dig your mind, right? That's what meditation and spiritual work is for, because you're trying to make contact with your oversoul. That's your ultimate goal, right? Question: is resurrection possible? Answer: resurrection is not only possible, but it's probable once you re-educate yourself spiritually. Our goal is to learn how to get your cells vibrating in harmony with your spirit, which will open portals to higher dimensions. We accomplish this goal by being positive at all times, knowing that there are always solutions to challenges. This is why we know anger, frustration, stress, worry, anxiety, doubt, ignorance are all negative emotions designed to disconnect us from the higher dimensions of our ancestors. We know the goal of sixth ether is to keep us in these negative states that prevents us from working together in the power of love. Your emotions are your soul power that could be used for good or bad depending on your level of intelligence, aka the spirit force that dominates your personality. Now is the time to claim your birthright as a Nathar. Refer to the book the master put out on life after death. I've talked about this before. This particular book, very important book. Now I'm going to read right here. So on page 78 says Revelations, book of Revelations, chapter 20, verse 6 talks about Jesus Christ, speaks about the first resurrection. And it says the following: blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. There's that 1,000 years again, guys. This is the raising of the first fruits, the mentally dead, of which I was one. I too walked the planet unaware of my potential. I was as you are. I was raised by the angel Michael, El Khidr, the highest of all the angelic beings, when he appeared to me and informed me of my responsibility back in 1970. Now I am raising others to the truth of who you are, where you should be going, and how to get there. You too must join the ranks of the first resurrection, because the time for the second resurrection is near. Then he goes on to say, oh, this is a quote from Revelations. It says, but the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Then he goes on. Question: how can one become or be among the chosen few of 144,000? Answer: become incorruptible. Put on an incorruptible spirit. Refer to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Know what, when we say God, the Most High, the creative force, we talk about Panathato, we say, wants you to do and do it, right? Supreme among beings. But you have, once again, I'm sorry. What Panathato wants you to do and do it. Become supreme beings once again, which means supreme being means supreme among beings. But you have fallen down to the ranks of men. Refer to Psalms chapter 82. It says, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, but you shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. A human being, now here's the key, guys. A human being becomes a supreme being when he or she changes or transcends from mortal to an immortal. So this is your goal, to transform yourself back to an immortal. This is about becoming a Nathar again, right? He says a son of God, or a son of the Nathar, or what we masters call a self-perfected man or female. He says, like unto the angel Gabriel, right? So you got to be like the angel. Our goal is to be like the angel Gabriel, he's saying, when he appeared to Mary, the mother of Jesus, the Messiah. Refer to Luke chapter 1. An angel said unto her, fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God. And then Luke, he says, then said Mary unto the angel, how shall this be, seeing I know not a man? Right? Now he goes on to say, a person learns to become supreme through positive prayer, positive meditation, proper exercise, proper diet, cheerfulness, unselfishness, patience, being given, and always remembering what was Panatha, right? When you surrender all of your love and will to him or to them, and stand Jesus Christ, when you talk about Jesus Christ, you're talking about your oversoul, okay? In your heart, you will be enabled once again to regain the use of your third eye. That's why it is said that they will be able to leave the physical body and raise up. They will no longer need the physical and the material world, meaning you'll be able to travel out of body. You can read about that in Revelations. In the first chapter of Revelations, talk about John, the disciple, was able to go out of body. Many people do it, guys. Many people do it, and people who develop themselves spiritually know how to do those things, because you raise your vibration up, and so it makes it easy to do those things. But let's keep going. Once you get your desires, here's the key. Once you get your desires and once under your control, you will be ruler of the body instead of the body ruling you. At this point, the body is no longer in need, and you have become a supreme being by regaining that supreme stature. You You then become children of the Most High. When you're in control of your desires, that's the key, guys. You have to overcome your desires. And you know, us living here in America, we're plagued by desires. That's what's keeping us bound to this dimension. Then he goes on to say, page 80 says, Jesus is not coming on a chariot out of a cloud. So stop looking up there for him. He's coming like a thief in the night, knocking on the doors of your heart. Refer to Thessalonians, refer to Peter, refer to Luke chapter 12, Revelation chapter 3, right? He says, meaning that he would send his spirit in the last days, and from this would resurrect mentally groups of people who would be Messiah-like. Those who stop down and resurrect mentally now will be blessed when the last day arrives. They won't have to worry about dying. They will pass easily from the state of righteousness into eternal life, as it states in 1 John, right? And so this is all about resurrecting. And the only way to do that, what the master is trying to explain here, is to raise your vibration. That's the key, right, guys? Raise your vibration. Raise your vibration, because we're vibrating on a low, very low frequency because of the culture we live. It's all about the culture. This culture is what's keeping us our vibrations low, and that's why our senses are dormant. You heighten your senses as you raise your vibration. I repeat, you heighten your senses of smell, your sense of taste, your sense of touch, your sense of hearing. Your memory will increase. Right? These are the signs. When you're doing spiritual work, you'll feel the energies in your body. You'll feel those vibrations, what we call your chakras, your arushat, we say. Those seats will start vibrating. You'll actually, your third eye, when you close your eyes, you're still able to see. You actually begin to start peering into the other dimensions. All of this is possible. I know it's possible because I've done it. So I'm telling you guys. But again, it takes patience. It takes consistency, right? It takes focus. Okay. Uh-huh. Oh. Yeah, no link, sex. Yeah, see the challenge with sex is a hell of a thing, teacher, right? Yeah, sex, problem with the sex force. Remember that sex is six ether, right? Sex is six ether. The pleasure, understand what pleasure is, guys. Yeah, when you're feeling pleasure in your body, do you see the Mukasa sit there and tell you, oh, that's dopamine or whatever the crap they like to tell you? No, what pleasure is, whenever you're feeling pleasure from something, what that is you're harnessing ether into the body. It's like it's actually an ether rush. Okay. And so the sad thing is we do things to gain that rush that are actually not good for us. And it actually decays the body, like the food we eat, because it creates pleasure. A lot of things we call fun creates pleasure, but it's usually not good for us. We have to convert that. That's why we have to have control of our own culture, so we can create things that are fun, that are actually good for us and not bad for us. Because this culture teaches us the concept of fun in this culture is usually bad for us. But we don't have no control over, the culture here. We don't control anything in this country, and that's why it's so important for us to be able to set up our own systems and our own codes, systems of codes of conduct and our own cultural ways, so that we can control our own concepts of fun, as opposed to the things that they call in this society fun that's more or less destructive to us. So that's, extremely important. But, it's a lot. It's a lot. But this is extremely important information that we have to understand who and what we are, what our abilities are, and that we have the power, to control our own destiny. The choices, it's each individual's choice. for those who want to develop themselves spiritually versus those who don't. Now, as you guys know, most of our people don't care. Most of our people ain't thinking about developing themselves spiritually. Their head is in the in the club, and as the master teacher talks about, they're in a Las Vegas mindset, and so that's the last thing they're thinking about. So it'll be an elite few that work to develop themselves spiritually. That's the goal. This was the whole purpose of our whole doctrine, trying to educate our people. Why the master teacher spends so much time, so much years answering so many questions. We spend all this time asking all of these questions because it's stomped out growth. The way we think, and he's trying to clear all of these unnecessary things out of our mind so that we can focus on things that are necessary, which is our own spiritual development. And it'd be easier if we're living as a group in a community, as a body of people where we can control our own community. Imagine us buying our own subdivision, right? And we control the apartments, the homes, and stuff like that. We control the whole area. That's our goal, is to set systems up where we can control these things for our own children. Okay. Moon culture is versus sun culture. Yep. So when we gravitate towards the negative ether comes into you, all your negative behaviors, all of our negative behaviors is because of 6 ether that's in us, guys. Let's see. That's why we have to leave a lot of our loved ones behind. So when we gravitate towards the negative ether comes into you. For Nolene, this is the sad part. Jesus said that, right? Jesus talked about there's incident in the Bible where Jesus' mother comes to him and she's asking him to do something, to come with her, whatever. And he told his mother he's about his father's business, and he was with his disciples, and he said that this is my family. He told his own mother that. Your family, the master teacher always used to tell us, your family are those who share the same cultural ideals as you do. That's your family. And so in order for us to make contact with our higher dimensional family, the Nathar, we have to think like they think. That's why they won't talk to us. That's why they won't talk to the average black person on earth, because we think like the Mukasu. They don't have no interest. They have no interest in our people who think like the Mukasu. They're not concerned about them. They're only concerned about those who think like they think, those who share the same cultural ideals as they do. Or they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to make contact with you. That's why they sent the master to re-educate us on how they think. Because this is how you used to. Remember, guys, we're their children. We're their children. We come from them, but we don't behave like them no more. Let's see. Question. Let's see. Does the sun cycle bring more good spirit beings on the planet? Yes. That's why the sun cycle is what brought the master teacher to us. Literally, because when this, right? How can I say? The cycle and season that you're in will determine what you can and cannot do. I repeat, the cycle and season that you're in will determine what you can and cannot do. So for instance, when you're in the wintertime and there's a blizzard and it's snowing, you're limited to what you can and cannot do because of the season. When summer comes around, right, you're able to do things you can't do in the winter. Just like in the wintertime, you're able to do things in the winter you don't do in the summer, like skiing. So the season you're in will determine what you can and cannot do. Now, because we are children of the sun, the sun seasons or the sun cycles are more conducive for us. That's why they keep telling you guys, black people don't belong in cold environments, and we suffer from vitamin D deficiency, which means we're suffering from what they call mild illumination, being indoors all the freaking time because we live in cold climates. Black people don't belong in cold climates. It affects us physically. It makes us physically weaker. We belong in hot climates, right? We would be more efficient in a hot climate. But a lot of our people don't know that. So yes, when the sun cycle comes in, it makes it easier for us to have access to our spirit forces. Okay? Versus the moon cycle, that's what gave the Mukaso his power. He gets his power from the moon cycle. And we get our power from the sun cycle. You know, and these are things we used to know. We lost this right knowledge, and we have to become conscious of these facts again. You know, and so, but that's our goal, right? It all starts with the power of love, Ashak. That's our ultimate goal, is the power of Ashak, you know, to tap back into Ashak, right? That's the ruling spirit force. That's what non-ether is, divine love. You don't judge. There's no judgment in divine love. And all, because remember, all this judgment, all that negativity, all this gossip, all this slander stuff, all that stuff, all that comes from fear. That's why people do it. You know, the reason why you're seeing black people behave like that so much is fear. They're fear. All their complaints is they're afraid. It all comes from fear, right? And so they talk bad about somebody because they're like afraid. Look out for this person. They tell you, look out for this, and they're gonna do this to you, and they're gonna do that to you. It all comes from fear. Now, where does fear come from? Right? I say it in our principles. That's why I go over the principles, right? And I said, what are the 6 weapons of Leviathan? Fear, guys, comes from ignorance. Fear comes from ignorance, guys. Even lust comes from ignorance. Lies comes from ignorance. Slander comes from ignorance. All that stuff. 6 ether is ignorance. It's the spirit force of ignorance. Just like 9 ether is the spirit force of the divine mind. That's why they're opposites. 6 and 9 are opposites. It's the same symbol turned upside down. So you take the 6, you turn it upside down, and turn it into a 9. You take the 9, turn it upside down, turns it into a 6. They're opposites to each other. One represents the living, the other represents the dead. And the living in mind power. 6 is dead in mind power. 6, that's why 6 represents ignorance. And when you're in a state of ignorance, then it puts you in a state of fear. It makes you lie, cheat, slander, get over. That's why we're living in the world. Remember, slavery, the slave master did what? He had to make sure that the slave was ignorant. All they did 24 hours a day was dumb us down. The Mukaso, as you already know, they made it illegal for us to learn anything because you control a people by keeping them ignorant. Why you think in our doctrine, the master wrote so many books to raise your intelligence level, guys? That's our goal. Question from Allison. Quick question. In the book of Revelations, that is a letter sent by an angel to give warning to the churches in present day. Who are these letters given to? Is it the actual churches? That's a good question. I would need to know what verse and chapter you're referring to, so we can read it and look at it before I can address it. So if you know the verse and chapter, then we can bring it up and then we can go over it, right? Because I'm somewhat familiar with those areas, that subject matter, but not too much. I would have to read it, and then I have some greater insight. But just on just on off the top of my head, the church, they're not referring to the churches today. They're not referring to these churches out here today. They wasn't even think about it. At that time, right? At that time, there's only one church, guys. There's only one church. There's only one Christian church. You guys must know that. And which is what? The Catholic Church. There are no other churches. So let me just say this. Jesus Christ was not a Christian, and that wasn't even his name, right? So let's get that straight. Jesus Christ, the character they're talking about in the Bible, has nothing to do with these churches. So that's important. All these churches came after so-called Jesus died. Jesus didn't start none of these churches, and that's not even his name. So let's get that started. That's how we know this whole Jesus Christ, this Christianity is a Caucasian religion. Has nothing to do with us Africans. They took our spiritual doctrine and they plagiarized it and they created their own religion out of it called Christianity. But it has nothing to do with this character they're talking about, so-called Jesus Christ. So that's very important to know. So that's why we say only the Caucasian can be Christians. No one else can be a Christian but the Caucasian. They are the Christians. No one else. That's important to know that. Revelation chapter 2. Okay. And let's see. Kufu. Would it stand to reason that Asar, Arashtat, and Hara achieved eternal life 25,000 years ago? Thus is the reason why we call upon them in our chants, because they are alive in Orion or Sahu. Our ancestors, we're related to our ancestors, right? So we're all related to our African ancestors. So Asar, Aset, Hara, all of those would be our, as the master would say, our descendants, right? And so, yeah, our whole goal is to make contact with our living descendants who exist on higher dimensions. One of the things we're constantly talking about is to make contact with our living descendants who do exist on those higher. Because one of the things they told about in Egyptian culture, the goal was to make it to we'll call Sabat, which is this Orion, Cyrus star constellation, or Saha, or Orion, they call it, right? And that was the goal of our ancestors. So they're existing on those higher realms, and our goal is to make contact with them. So that would include Asar, Aset, right? Hara, or the Nathar. We just say Nathar as a whole. That's main goal. Okay, Revelation chapter 3. Okay, let's see. Revelation chapter 3. If we can pull it up. And we're about to, in fact, what we're going to do is, because it's 9 o'clock, so we do our 9 o'clock chant, right? So we're going to do the chant, and then I'll address this question. And let's see. But let me bring it up so I have it. What's going on? All right. I think I got it. Okay, so yeah. So I'm gonna do our 9 o'clock chant, and then I'll address this this question, in regards to the book of Revelations, right? So let me do that. And let's see, where are we? Okay, For you guys who have it, you guys definitely follow along. For those who are new, you can follow along. I say the chant, our prayer system, and our lahaj, which is language, which is Sabaic, and you have the English translation right below it, so you guys can read through the English translation as I go through our Sabaic translation. Okay. All right. Badai kalal namasa wufad ko amad kasamun shalal pa'ut. That stands for begin all prayers and thinking as a part of pa pa'ut. Pa takyud. Anuki jawef pa ashuk im pa pa'ut. Wu kalet ashuk kawun jawef neya. Anuki kasamun im pa pa'ut. Wu pa pa'ut kawun kasamun im neya. Anuki wahu ameh pa pa'ut. Wu pa pa'ut kawun wahu ameh neya. Naku kador naju ameh kasamun im pa pa'ut. Wu khabu ameh mushkasun. Naku kador kawan kale pafaf naku daya jaweb pa pa'ut. Ameh wase ameh dayani kawun lake bakui jaweb pa pa'ut. Anuki yababi nafasni. Pa pa'ut kawun. Anuki pa pa'ut kador. Nakuk kador. Pa pa'ut amu. Nakuk amu. Lahehum manehnun. Lahehum manehnun. Ahumata karehum. Ahumata karekum. Ahumata karenun. Ahumata jawefnaya. Ahumata naya wu anuki hum. Yaye ashukuree. Asmua jayenun. Yaye nataru afuknun. Anunata mukra ukum. Yaye nataru afuknun. Afuknun. Yaye nataru nun. Anun. Atun. Amun. Namazo wahu. Yaye mufaku. Yaye nataru. Yaye saye, yaye nataru. Yaye hika, yaye nataru. Ankum ata pa mufaku. Yaye yaye nataru. Ankum ata pa mufaku. Wu anun ata mukra ukum. Wu ankum ata muisanun. Yaye yaye nataru. Aro muklas nun atum re'e. Yaye yaye nataru. Namazo atu aro enhu. Yaye mukdam u afut nun. Ankum mane yake laduda muslafu nun. Wu muisa nun. Mane yake sawura paba. Mane yake kawuna kau. Mane yake ata akhak. Mane yake kawuna bashawu damam. Yaye nataru mukdamu nun. Aro muftad nun. Anhu kawun manzal mane pa nataru. Aro anhu. Anhu kawun baba yananan. Aro anhu. Anhu kawun atum re'e. Aro anhu. Anhu kawun haro. Namazo talu. Yaye nataru muslafu nun. Afut nun mane pa mujwa'u. Afut nun mane gahal an. Yaye nataru afut nun. Mane saya gayura. Afut nun afut naye. Afut nun afut naye. Yaye nataru nun. Namazo rabu pa tahmui. Nakuk talub tahmui bi pa nataru. Mane pa laen lawi tanenu. Kale ranam atni at the lahe pa nataru. Wu kale namazo atni at the lahe kayat yatun laye pa nataru. Pa sawat wu pa turuk. Panem misfa kawun. Pa sawat wu pa turuk. Z kawuna nazula lahe ankum. Mane maspat wu masa. Ama hade an un wu damal un. Mane muslafukum wu nataru ajulaye nafasukum afuk shene kawunkum pa sawat wu pa turuk pa hadayan wu pa damal anun tawa ankum lahe panan damal wu shafe anun tawa ankum lahe tim nasuinun anun tawa ankum lahe ashukuma ankum ata muslafunun anun ata mukra'ukum anun talub nasakuma anun talub nasakuma and so nun kahen nataru and so nun muslafunun anun ata musba'u anun atun atun amun yaye nataru nun yaye mufta'u yaye nataru yaye atum ure'e yaye natar yaye nun yaye natar yaye nun tat yaye natar tat yaye ha yaye natar yaye hatat yaye natar tat yaye kak yaye natar yaye kaktat yaye natar tat yaye amun yaye natar yaye amun tat yaye natar tat yaye mufkamuyi yaye nataru yaye atum yaye natar yaye shashash yaye natar yaye tafaf natat yaye natar tat yaye sabab yaye natar yaye natat yaye natar tat yaye arash tat yaye natar tat yaye asa yaye natar yaye nabab tahatat yaye natar tat yaye satach yaye natar yaye hara yaye natar nataru shalil pa meye yaye haptwi yaye natar yaye anakta yaye natar tat yaye aha haratwi yaye natar nataru shalil pa nawar yaye nafatum yaye natar yaye mantu yaye natar yaye bapti yaye natar yaye sakamta yaye natar tat yaye hata harata yaye natar tat yaye ba'a ibish yaye natar yaye patata yaye natar yaye basasta yaye natar tat yaye imhatap yaye natar nataru shalil pa hawe yaye hu yaye natar yaye matat yaye natar tat yaye mahat yaye natar tat yaye khafaf ra'e yaye natar yaye miskanat yaye natar tat yaye rayeta yaye natar tat yaye khentimentiu yaye natar yaye hika yaye natar tat yaye natar tat yaye natar tat yaye ma'at yaye natar tat yaye ranenta yaye natar tat yaye she yaye natar tat yaye sasha yaye natar tat yaye mafda yaye natar tat nataru shalil pa matha yaye sabach yaye natar yaye anap yaye natar yaye khanum yaye natar yaye khanas yaye natar yaye patata nun yaye natar yaye saye yaye natar yaye hakta yaye natar tat yaye amas yaye natar yaye saratwi yaye natar yaye atum re'e yaye natar tat yaye dahutwi yaye natar yaye patata warat yaye natar tat yaye sakata yaye natar tat yaye ha yaye natar yaye naheb ka'ah yaye natar yaye sakah yaye natar yaye ba'ah yaye natar yaye akah yaye natar yaye haratat yaye natar tat yaye wapawatat yaye natar yaye sakat hataptat yaye natar tat yaye maritat sakatat yaye natar tat yaye sayetat yaye natar tat yaye garatat yaye natar tat yaye asa inu yaye natar yaye bahatat yaye natar tat yaye khanemtat yaye natar tat yaye manaktat yaye natar tat yaye khanem yaye natar yaye mahatwi yaye natar yaye kabef senanafaf yaye natar yaye dah mata'afaf yaye natar yaye maritat Yeye nathatat, yeye nasat, yeye nathar, yeye imdadatat, yeye nathatat, yeye nachakbatat, yeye nathatat, yeye sakhatat, yeye nathatat, yeye anaktat, yeye nathatat, yeye dadad, yeye nathar, yeye tum, yeye nathar, yeye wahu, yeye nathar, yeye yasas, yeye nathar, yeye anach, yeye nathar, yeye afnuit, yeye nathar, yeye satat, yeye nathatat, yeye sakhatwi, yeye nathar, yeye ma'at, yeye nathar, yeye nanah, yeye nathar, yeye imnuit, yeye nathar, yeye satatwi, yeye nathar, yeye mugdaltat, yeye nathatat, yeye rahashafaf, yeye nathar, yeye maratwi, yeye nathar, yeye amun re'eh, yeye nathar, yehu and ata kaled jawef pa'ot nun re'eh, tun re'eh, tun re'eh, mun re'eh. Jennifer. Okay. Now, guys, in doing the prayers, the rituals, the chants is so important. These I do it and I have to do it for you guys because you guys need to see the process that we go through, right? And like as you go into like when I just chanted the Amun, the vibrations start increasing because like your body was already prepped from doing the actual chanting. And then when you go into that and at the latter part of the chant, then you start chanting Amun and you'll begin to feel those energies, guys. You know, I challenge all you guys to start doing that. That's why we say the prayers, our prayer systems are 9 a.m., 3 p.m., 9 p.m., and 3 a.m. for those who can wake up. And you start and you do those things consistently, right? You'll feel the effects. You'll feel the differences. You'll feel it in your body. You know, you'll feel the effects of these, you know, of these things. You know, especially when you add in all the other things we talk about doing. You'll definitely feel the effects of those things. So that's why I do it for you guys, for your edification, so you guys can see the process and how you go from the chanting into that, you know, how I do that whole process. And that's something the master teacher had taught us how to do in our prayer books. He explained, you know, that procedure. So it's not like I'm making it up, but hopefully I'll be able to show it to you guys. You know, hopefully we'll have a class just on that. Right. And so that's important. Question. This is from, it's hard for me to read my screen. Who is that? What's the name? Okay, so question. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to. My other screen is hard for me to see sometimes. But the question is, can you? Yeah, I'm gonna get back to the Allison's question. Question: can you tell me about the 25th dynasty, Pere Shabaka of the Shabaka stone? Very little is talked about him. And then question: how would you deal with a narcissist in your family or make mate in your life? Do you totally avoid them or effectively deal with them? Okay. Then Nolene Frank question: since the Caucasian man gets his power from the moon and the woman is also connected to the moon, why doesn't she have power in his power to oppress him? That's an interesting question. Huh? All right. Yeah. Um, okay, let me back up. Okay. I'll deal with everyone's question. Like, first, let me go back to the Revelation question that Allison had talked about. Let's see. So where are we at? Now, when we're dealing with the Bible, guys, just as a rule of thumb, we never start in the middle of a Bible chapter, right? We always start from the beginning. It's very important to do that as a rule of thumb. Whenever you're reading the Bible, I know that those are habits we've learned through Christianity because Christian ministers like doing that. They'll pick a quote out of the Bible and they'll do a whole sermon on it. We don't do that. So it's always important to start from the very beginning because it gives us an idea of what the subject matter is, and it brings clarity to some of the questions, right? So, but that's kind of how we've been trained to address Bible. But all right, so now we're at Revelations chapter 2, right? So we're going to start from the top and then we're going to go down to verse 3 and see what we got. It says, unto the angel of the church of Ephesus writes, these things saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. Says, I know thy works and thy labor and thy patience and how thou hast cast canst not bear them which are evil, and thou hast tried them which say they are apostles and are not, and hast found them liars, and what's that? Has and no, I know you can't. And has, because this thing is so small. And has borne has borne and has patience, and for my name's sake has labored and has fainted. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. Okay. So she said Revelation chapter 2. What was this question again? It was in the book of Revelations, there is a letter sent by an angel to give warning to the churches in present day. Who are these letters given to? Is it actual churches? I don't see where it's talking about letters. Let's see. Let's keep going. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. Remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and I will remove thy candlestick out of his place, except thou repent. But this thou hast hastened the deeds of the Necrolites, which I also hate. He that has an ear, let him hear that the Spirit said unto the churches, to him that overcometh will I give to eat the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Yeah, now let's keep in mind, there were no churches. Jesus had no churches. And so we got to remember that these were translated. According to the Bible, Jesus spoke Hebrew and Aramaic. Okay. He did not speak Greek. He wasn't talking to his disciples in Greek. He surely wasn't talking to them in English. So the book of Revelations, these books were translated into Greek. Then they were translated into German. Then they were translated into English. Okay. And so they're using English terminology, Greek terminology, interpreting what people who spoke Hebrew and Aramaic were saying. So that's the first thing to understand, because obviously Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus didn't go to churches, right? Jesus went to synagogues. It talks about that in the Bible. Jesus went to synagogues. Okay. This whole church thing didn't start to the Romans with Peter and Paul. But so we have to keep that in mind. So we had actually wrote books. The master teacher translated the whole book of Revelations. I can go over that. I can address that next week in detail to try to give you more insight on what we teach about what the church, what those churches, represent. Because I haven't dealt with this in a long time, so I forget. But I'll make a notation of that, Allison, and I'll be very specific when it comes into what the actual proper translation of what the churches, who the churches represented symbolically, obviously. Okay, so I'll make a notation of that for next week to address it. Now, going back to the other question from this name that I can't see. The name. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so question: can you tell me about the 25th dynasty, Shabaka, of the Shabaka stone? Very little is talked about him. First, as far as Shabaka, obviously he was from Nubia, right, the lower part of Sudan, and this was when I think they said around 650 BC, that the Nubians took over all of Kemet, all of Egypt, right? And so Shabaka was one of the rulers that took over. He was a successor, right, of Kemet, and so he was one of the rulers in Kemet, and he found what they call the Shabaka stone. He didn't find a Shabaka stone. He found a manuscript, and they supposedly translated what was on that manuscript onto this stone that they call the Shabaka stone. And it was an origin story. It was talking about our origins in the Shabaka stone. That's what they call it, the Memphite theology, where he was trying to explain one, and this is an important fact, guys, for you guys to know this. Shabaka was making the declaration that the Sudanese and the Egyptians are the same people, have the same descendancy, because so-called Egyptologists to this day want to sit there and say the Sudanese and the Egyptians were two different types of people, and that's a lie. And that's something Sheikh Antip Joke proved, because they had a big old symposium, a debate about the origin of the ancient Egyptians and where they're connected to what they call the sub-Saharan Africans, right? And Sheikh Anta Dia proved, him and Theophilo Banga proved that the Egyptians as well and the Sudanese were all the same. They were Africans like everyone else, right? Egypt is in Africa. They're African, and they had black skin with woolly hair, and even Greeks have said that. But now it's interesting when you read the Shabaka stone, where Shabaka, who came from Nubia, he was ruling Egypt, and he made it clear that the Egyptians was his bloodline, the Nathar. He was talking about the Nathar because he talked about the Nathar, what they call Ptah or Ta, or we say Fa, right? And he said he was they're related to them. Okay. And when we say the Tahites. And so that's what the Shabaka stone talks about, that our origins comes from the Tahites. And they personified, they grew the universe. It says that they grew the universe and then they personified onto this planet, which is our origin. So that Shabaka stone, that's a very important stone and a very important concept for our people to be aware of, because that's a connection or a link that links us with Kemet, that the Sudanese, and keep this in mind, the Sudanese and Egyptians share the same exact culture, right? Everyone knows that the Egyptians had an African culture, So the Sudanese and Egyptians are the same culture. They live together. They exchange cultural concepts, and it was reported that the Egyptians said that they came from the Sudanese or the South, or Uganda. I think they said they originate from, which is where the Twa live. The Tahites live. They live in the Congo in that Uganda area in South Africa. So that's important to know. So that Shabaka stone is important. But yes, Shabaka was just one of the rulers, what they call the 25th dynasty, right? And these rulers came out of the Sudan, and they was trying to unify the, Kemet, because Kemet was at that time it was in this decay process. So Shabaka was just one of the rulers. But it's hard. They don't have too many people who talk about Shabaka. That's the sad part. And other than Caucasians, and they usually lying about them, so you really can't read their sources when it comes to talking about the 20. Because a lot of them don't even want to talk about the 25th dynasty, the so-called Egyptologists. And you can refer to our boy, our good brother Anthony Browder, because he talks about that a lot. And he researches Kemet, and they purposely ignore the 25th dynasty and their contribution to Kemet. So that's that. Now, as far as the other questions, Amal, how would you deal with a narcissist, in your family or mate in your life? Do you totally avoid them or effectively deal with them? Yeah, see, that's an interesting question. We all have family, we love our family. But me personally, I come from a big family, but I don't really deal with my family too much because of the cultural difference. I go to my family on holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, things like that. I'll celebrate that with them, and I'll make connect with them. But for the most part, I'm not really around my family because of the simple fact that they don't identify with, their African culture. They don't identify with their African heritage. They have been westernized. They see themselves as, American Black people. And so they're not interested in learning about their culture as Africans and changing their culture. They're just not interested in that. And so, it's for me, I'm talking about for me, and what we teach is it's no point trying to be around individuals who are not going to share the same culture, live the same cultural ideals, because they will influence you. Because when two people get together, somebody's either influencing and becoming the influencer and an influencee, and whoever has a dominant personality will become the influencer. So you guys got to be mindful of being around individuals who don't share the same cultural ideals, because if they have a strong personality, a strong spirit personality, you can get influenced and they will alter your morphic resonance. Your morphic resonant field, your change of vibration, which would change how you think, how you behave. That's one of the challenges of being around Mukasu, the Caucasian. That's why a lot of our people who was raised around a Caucasian, a Mukasu, they start speaking like them. Like all these black people that are newscasters, like these black newsmen, they talk like a Mukasu. If you didn't see their face, you couldn't tell the difference whether they were a Mukasu or not. And that's because their morphic field has been altered by being around them. So, guys, it's very important who you be around. You're affected by the energies of the person, places, and things you put yourself in. I know it's a touchy subject because we're dealing with family, man, and we love our family, regardless of their behavior. We love our family, but you don't want your family to take you off the path, because they will. If you let them, they will. So you guys have to be mindful of that. Okay, let's see. Then we have Nolene question. Let's see. Since the Mukasu gets his power from the moon, and a woman is also connected to the moon, why doesn't she have power in power? Is his power to oppress her? I think I understand what you're trying to say. Yes, the female is connected to the moon, but the female's not. She doesn't have a moon spirit, right? So, because we're talking about spirit. So the black woman is 9 ether, like the black man. The black man comes from the black woman. The black woman is 9 ether. Yes, your physical body is connected to the moon, is affected by the moon. Like the menstrual cycles. The female is in tune with those cycles. Her body is in tune with those cycles. But the black woman comes from a higher spirit force. And remember, your spirit is your intellect. So when we talk about the Mukasu being and connected to the moon, we're talking about his intellect is connected to the moon energy. It's the same energy, right? The moon energy. And what does that moon stands for? It stands for a dead solar body, meaning there's no life on the moon. You don't see trees growing on the moon. You don't see plants and flowers growing on the moon, and insects and life forms running on the moon. So it represents a dead solar body, right? And the moon gets its energy and life from where? The sun has no life of its own. And that's what the Mukasu represents. That's why they call themselves Caucasian. Caucus, right, means a dead flesh. A caucus, a dead body. Caucus from Asia. And so they represent the dead forces, the lower, the weaker spirit forces. And the way those spirit forces operate, they operate based on deception. They operate based on trickery and lies and murder and mayhem. And they live adverse to nature, which is why the Mukasu loves creating artificial stuff like plastic and artificial everything. Food is artificial now, right? Artificial clothes, everything is a fake with them. They alter natural nature. The black woman is connected to nature. The black woman is in harmony with natural nature. So the black woman's nature is opposite to the Mukasu, even though she's affected physically by the moon cycles, right? By the 29 days in the moon or whatever, how many days a moon, is a lunar, what they call lunar calendar. But so, I hope that makes sense, but the black woman has a totally different spirit force. She's 9 ether. The Mukasu is 6 ether. That's important to know that. And different spirits mean different mentalities. Remember that, guys. Spirit represents your intellect. Weaker spirits, weaker intellect. Intelligent spirit, stronger intellect. And that just means The intelligent spirits are more in harmony with nature. The weaker spirits are out of harmony with nature. That's all that means. So it's very big reading. Question. Let's see. The spirit disagreeables. How do you actually exercise them out of yourself and others? Okay, remember, your spirit is your personality. Your spirit is your personality. So the weaker spirits, the lower spirit forces behave a certain way, right? The lower spirit forces is the people who are alcoholics. Those are 6 ether spirits. The people who are into gambling, 6 ether spirits. There's people into, pornography, 6 ether spirits. They liars, cheaters. They're connivers. They don't take care of their health, right? They're not trustworthy. They're not responsible. So I was laying all the characteristics of a 6 ether spirit, all the behaviors, and we all have these behavior patterns, guys, to let you know we have these spirits moving through us. 9 ether spirit is a totally different personality trait. So the goal is you exercise that spirit by changing your behavior. You exercise the lower spirits by changing your behavior. So let's say you're a chronic smoker, right? And you learn to stop smoking. That means you got rid of that spirit that had you smoking. You get rid of all of the negative behavior that you grew up doing from this culture, because this culture, Western culture, teaches us how to behave negative, how to be addicted to all of the things that this culture offers us. And so we're teaching in Wu-Sabat how one's supposed to conduct themselves. That's what we say patarak, which means our way of doing things. We have our way of doing things versus they have their way of doing things. When you start taking on more attributes of a 9 ether being, you're getting rid of the behavior of the 6 ether being. You give up the things of a 6 ether being. Okay, and it's in the things you do. A 9 ether being is doing their rituals, right? Always maintain being clean, being a kind person, being a helpful individual, being a loving individual, right? A 9 ether being is not picking and choosing who they love. A 9 ether being is in harmony and tune with all. Love all for what it is, right? A 9 ether being is dealing with intellect. So it can love a snake, but at the same time, a 9 ether being is not going to put its hand inside of a mouth of a snake. You know the nature. You're not going to put your head inside of a mouth of a lion. That doesn't mean you don't love the lion. You love the lion for what it is. But you know the nature of the lion, so you know how to deal with him. The problem with us as Africans, we forgot the nature of the Mukaso, so we didn't know how to deal with him. And so he took advantage of our ignorance. We're suffering because of our ignorance. Once you understand the nature of a person, of a place, and a thing, then you don't have to be in fear of that person, place, or thing, and you'll be able to effectively deal with it. And that change, that we fix that once we increase our intelligence level. And so, that's very important for us to know, guys, right? We have to know that, and how to deal with the Mukaso and how to get rid of those lower forces in us. You get rid of the lower forces, as I said, by changing your behavior, right? No more lying, no more cheating, no more stealing, stop eating bad foods, right? Fast once or twice out of the week, exercise, do your meditation, your breathing rituals, all of the things we talk about. When you make that your habit and you get rid of your bad habits, that's how you get rid of those lower forces. They leave you because the lower forces, they feed off the energies. They feed off those negative energies. And when you don't feed it, you don't do those bad behaviors, right? Those negative habits, the forces leave you. Those lower forces leave you. So if you're a glutton and you can't control your gluttony, that lower force is feeding off that gluttony. When you stop feeding that force, when you stop that behavior, that force can't feed off of you no more, and it leaves you. It leaves the host. And that's why you learn to overcome these spirit forces by raising your intellect. That's why we keep saying that. Changing your behavior. Changing your behavior, you purge yourself of those lower forces. That's the key. All right. Let's see anything. We are blessed one another. That's okay. I was confused about actually churches. Intelligence. Okay. As we raise our vibrations, Nolene Frank, vibrations, frequency, relatives will start to look at us differently. They will start to show a side unrecognizable. Okay. I don't know if that's a question, Nolene, or just a statement. As we raise our vibrations higher, our lesser frequency relatives will start to look at us differently. They will start to show a side unrecognizable. You're probably right. You're probably right. You'll have an influence on them. I'll say that. As you're raising your vibration, because what I'll tell you this, guys, as you're raising your vibration, it'll be harder to be in certain areas, in certain environments. It'll be harder to be around electronics because you can pick up the electrical signals as you're raising your vibrations. It'll be harder to be around computers, TVs, cell phones, because all those frequencies, our people don't realize are affecting us big time. But our people don't know it because they're vibrating at such a low rate. They're not in tune with those frequencies. But as you raise your vibration, you will feel those frequencies. I guarantee it, guys. Okay, guys. It's late, and we're gonna close out. I hope. If you guys have any more questions, remember you guys can put questions in the comments. Right? I always recommend that. Always recommend you guys to always spread the word. Right? Let people know what we're doing, what we're trying to do. We're in this war. We're fighting this war against Leviathan. And it's a cultural battle. Remember that, guys. It's about correcting yourself, correcting your behavior. Learning, you guys must identify the negative side of your behavior, the lower side of your behavior, and that's what you're working to perfect, to correct yourself. That's our whole goal, right? And that's how you purge those negative forces out of you, by correcting your behavior. So y'all want to remember that, And so once you're able to purge that, that's how you're able to make contact. Now, your higher dimensional family, you're able to make contact because you're raising your vibration. They're able to make contact with you, And so that's very important. I'll show you this last thing. This is something that the master teacher talks about. Let me see. In this prayer book right here, guys. Just as a last point, he talks about it right here. Now, this is the prayer book. It's called, just so you know, this is called Pa Balach M Yananin, the message of Yanun, right? Now, when you look at this particular book, he goes into that. He says this right over here. It says right here, this is, I highlighted it. It says, your etheric parents can only descend to a certain level themselves. If you have not raised up enough spiritually or level of vibration, they cannot carry you. In ancient Magma, Egypt, they were always doing rituals to constantly constantly kept you properly aligned with the tone of A, in tune with the planet and nature on the note of F, and the heavenly bodies above as the cosmos on the note of C. After being assimilated into a foreign land and language or tongue and mindset, what was natural for you has become foreign. So you call out and your call was answered. And he's talking about the prayer system here, but the master teacher is trying to say is that the Etherians who you connect with as you raise up, they can only make contact with you if you're raised up to a certain level of a certain vibration, right? They won't see you. They won't be able to see you if you don't raise up to a certain vibration. And you do that by correcting your behavior, by doing the rituals. So that's important for you guys to know that, So I definitely want to stress that. That's a good question. Question from Knowledge Seeker. Question: when it says our etheric parents can only reach us at a certain level, is the level the plane of force? It's actually the spiritual plane, right? If you can make it to the plane of force, then you definitely can make it to the spiritual plane, because remember, right? The planes are all interwoven into each other. And so judgment starts at the spiritual plane, right? The spiritual plane is the realm of the plane that decides whether or not you elevate to the mental plane and you move up into the higher abodes, or you recycle back to the, reincarnate back. That starts at the spiritual plane. Okay. And so the plane of force, as you know, is connected to the spiritual plane. So if you're able to make contact, raise up to the plane of force, then it's easy, really easy to get to the spiritual plane after that. Okay. So that's important. And the master goes into that. If you read in fact, the book I was just reading, Is There Life After Death? He goes into that pretty well. And I think read the book, What and Where is Hell? He goes into he goes into that also in good detail in those particular books. So, that's important to know. But on that note, guys, again, we're gonna call it a day or call it a night. And next week we definitely gonna be here. So like I said, if anyone have any other questions, you guys leave it in the comments. Always refer people. Let the world know what we're doing. That we're fighting this war. We're fighting this war for the benefit of our people, guys. Right? For the benefit of our people, we're fighting this war. Everybody needs to get in on it. On this war to make life better for all of us. So on that note, I will see you guys. And be blessed. Why do to all? Yes, sir. Why do to all?